and you're very welcome along to another edition of Tipcast. My name is Shane Brophy with the Nina Garda, joined once again by Paul Carroll of Tip FM Sport and Noel Dunlan, local journalist in Tipperary. Gents, you're very welcome along.
Thanks very much, Shane.
I suppose, gents, we're first weekend in June and All Ireland in the bag. Couldn't have asked for better. And look, I suppose last Saturday, I think everybody was very, satisfied. But I suppose you're winning All Ireland, you're thrilled, but definitely great sense of satisfaction, and kind of strange in some ways that I was done so comfortably. I know going down into Lions Den against Kilkenny, you're wary of what you could meet. But like, I suppose, Noel, I'll start with you. I suppose I think the fact that Tip had been in All Ireland finals before, minor and under 21, I think it really stood to this group last weekend.
Yeah, and the experience of playing down in Kilkenny too, Shane, was probably a big factor. Like as you mentioned, the Lions Den, and I suppose we were all referencing Nolan Park as being the Lions Den last week when we were doing the previews and all that, and rightly so. But the fact that these lads have played down there in high octane games was certainly a big help. I think they didn't really fear all that much going down there. And before you play any big game, let alone in All Ireland, there's going to be nerves in that. And we were maybe a little nervy early on, but I think once we settled into the groove of the game, we were very much in control. And you'd have to say that, Kilkenny didn't actually put up all that much of a resistance to us, really. And I thought even, the fact that they set up with a sweeper in front of our forward line, when they were playing with a very strong wind, it kind of spoke to their mindset, really, which was one of containment rather than going after this game. And once we were able to circumvent that sweeper and to work our way around it, we controlled the game.
Yeah, and I suppose we probably all wouldn't have seen much of Kilkenny beforehand, maybe apart from the Leinster final. And like we thought, Dublin, there was more Dublin set up that probably forced Kilkenny to play the way they did. But then you see it at the All Ireland, and Kilkenny set up the very, very same way. And yeah, I'd agree with you, Noel. I was watching the toss intently, because like when we got down there, like the breeze was significant, and I was thinking, how is it going to go? And then Sam won the toss, and he elected to go against it. And I said, okay, this is giving the underdog a chance here, because like even if Kilkenny got a 2-3 point lead at half time, it puts the pressure on Tipperary to chase them down. But I thought at half time we were comfortable. I actually thought after 5 minutes, provided Tip don't shoot themselves in the foot, they're going to win this game comfortably. And I just thought they looked the more complete team, the well coached team, the more skillful team, and it worked out that way.
Yeah, it probably kind of all around the field, Tip were just that maybe a little bit better than Kilkenny on the day. And yeah, the first half, it was obviously a planned thing that if Tip did win the toss, they're going to go against the breeze. And it's one of those things that there's probably no real correct answer to it. It's something you kind of look back in hindsight, and what do you do when you're going against a breeze like that, or when there is a breeze, do you go against it or go with it? Like sometimes All Ireland finals or big games like that, there's probably nearly a 10-minute feeling out process at the start of the game, no matter what. And you may as well be playing against the breeze in that case. But Tip obviously had a plan. They were in fairness, they were well studied up on how Kilkenny played. In terms of the puck outs, they knew what to do. A lot of them went to Sam O'Farrell. He seems to be a real kind of just calming presence, I suppose, and a safe pair of hands back there. He kind of took a lot of the responsibility of just coming to the edge of the D, taking the short puck out and going from there. So it wasn't perfect by any means in that first half, though. There was a lot of loose ball from Tip played to Jeff Neary, the sweeper, and likewise Jim Ryan and Sam O'Farrell were fielding a lot of loose clearances from Kilkenny. So first half was definitely not a classic, but I was definitely happy going in at half time. The fact that Tip were 2 points up against that breeze, and Kilkenny had one shot on goal, Marty Murphy. It was a good save from Owen Horgan, but apart from that, they didn't really threaten the Tipperary goals with that breeze. And the breeze was really, really strong. If you weren't there, it was a very strong breeze, kind of fairly right down the middle of the field. So I think Kilkenny will have regrets about not using Marty Murphy, because towards the end of the game, where they just kind of started hitting hopeful balls to the edge of the square, Like, he's a mountain of a man, and he's well able to hurl as well. And the goal he got was exceptional. Like, I don't know how he got so much power on that goal, with two lads on him off his left hand side. But he was a big threat, and I was delighted to see he was kind of underutilized kind of throughout the game on Saturday.
Yeah, no. Before we touch back to Tip, just on Kilkenny, and I just thought the style of hurling, okay, you might set up with a sweeper, but it just didn't. It never suited them. It just doesn't suit them, and I think we're wondering why is the enthusiasm for hurling in Kilkenny waning? And I just don't think their supporters like what they're seeing, even at senior level, even though they're going for 6 Leinsters in a row this weekend. I suppose we grew up with swashbuckling Kilkenny teams that would win a battle, and like we were kind of going down there last Saturday thinking, okay, Tip are going to be the favourites. So what do you do when you're the underdog? You turn it into a battle. But we never got it. Like, okay, you can set up with a sweeper, but then if you allow the sharp puck out, you've got to either put the striker under pressure, or you've really got to really get to those breaks fast. And like, they didn't even bring that either. Like, I thought it was like, it'll be interesting. Maybe it's just a 1 year thing, but I think it'll be and Kilkenny still won a Leinster minor championship, but then you look at the last 4 in the minor, it's 3 Munster, 1 Leinster in Kilkenny. I just wonder, there's definitely, I definitely think the dog-eat-dog nature of the Munster championship feeding down to under 20 in minor is helping the Munster counties again.
Yeah, like Shane, we were sitting in the box watching the game, and you could hear in the stand the sort of frustration that was there on the part of the supporters, and one supporter in particular who was down in front of us, who was constantly roaring, let it in, because they had a big asset there in their full forward. You know, Marty Murphy, like he had a super hand and caught a number of balls there. Like, but Kilkenny were going a different route. I thought, reflecting on the game, that, you know, Kilkenny are trying to embrace this new trend in hurling. Not so new now, maybe. It's there, you know, a number of years, probably brought in by the successful Limerick team, and everybody else has tried to copy it. They've gone away from their old style of, you know, beat your man, win the ball, beat your man, win your individual battle. I think we struggled with that as well, Shane, when we started to transition a couple of years ago. But we're further down the road in that particular style, or developing that style, than Kilkenny are. And they reminded me a lot of what we looked like maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where, you know, Paul mentioned a lot of the stray ball that was going down on top of the sweeper, and at the other end of the field where we would have been driving stray ball down on top of their sweeper. But we've become much more comfortable with that kind of a scenario now. And even you look at last year's minor, where we were down to 13 men, having had the 2 men sent off in the All-Ireland, we were still able to figure out where to put the ball and that. And I think that's coming from the fact that we're getting a lot more comfortable with that style. Yeah. Kilkenny still have a distance to go with it. And, you know, it kind of saddens me in ways that, you know, teams like Tipp and Kilkenny have had to adapt that style, because I think certainly going on the first half of last Saturday's game, what we would have had, you know, 7-8 years ago was far more exciting, where it's, you know, man beat man, swashbuckling kind of hurling. Any clash between Tipp and Kilkenny down in Kilkenny, whether it was drafts they were playing, there'd be skin and hair flying, you know, and we had none of that on Saturday. The first half was, you know, dare I say it, kind of boring, actually. You could actually hear conversations going on in the stand below us, and you'd never. The only time I experienced that actually was I went to a Premier League soccer match between Spurs and Brentford about two years ago, and you could hear all the conversations going on around you, and no real buzz in the stand. I just hope we're not going down that route with our GA games, you know.
Yeah, you kind of you'd be wary, like, of, I suppose, where hurling has gone. Like, I'd agree that, look, while we've had some great hurling over the last few years and some epic games, Limerick, Cork, Clare, Kilkenny, I think I'm one of those that I'm not a fan of the modern game. You have all these high scores, but like, there could be 60 puck outs a match and maybe throwing a few line balls. Like, that's a lot of time where the ball is dead, like, and there's not an awful lot of ball and play time anymore. So, I'd be interested maybe over the next few years if seen the success of the FRC. Is there a HRC needed? And I'm saying just to have a look at things. That's all. Like, and like, I'm not saying there isn't an awful lot wrong with hurling, but can we try and get some of the excitement back in it again? Like, so, look, maybe we got a very exciting. Maybe the fact that they say there was a flat atmosphere. Maybe Kilkenny supporters turned up last weekend more than hope and expectation. And in fairness to the Tip fans, Paul, they really turned out. They were definitely up 2, maybe 3-1 in terms of support. And like with 10 minutes into the second half, I thought when Paddy McCormick got that goal, I said, this is over now, because I just didn't think Kilkenny had the wherewithal to even make sort of a smash and grab, like, unless they changed their MO completely, because like they were finding it tough. I didn't think they were fully, as you said, they weren't as comfortable knowing what they were doing in terms of Tip. Like, you saw Tip in the first half when Sam Farrell got the short puck out. He could mix it up going short, or he could go up the wing to his 2 wing forwards, and maybe one of them could win the ball. And then if they got to the midfield, it was a diagonal ball into McCormick and O'Donoghue were sort of playing, sort of marking, well, I'd say in the same area, like one up and one on the break, and they're apparently nearly a decoy out the field.
Yeah, you could definitely see what Tip were trying to do in that first half. And, you know, like that, we saw a lot of diagonal high kind of ball in on top of Oisin O'Donoghue and Paddy McCormick. And that was probably something that was the big negative coming out of last year's final, was that there was no ball going into the full forward line last year against Offaly, and if there was, it was sometimes a 1v3 in there, but a lot of the times the other day it was 2v2 or maybe 2v3 with Jeff Nary dropping back, and although in the first half maybe not a lot of clean ball was won by Paddy McCormick and Oisin O'Donoghue, it just gives the opposition that thought that threat is in behind, and just kind of opens up space. And the second half then, I thought what probably Tip did better than Kilkenny when the sides flipped at half time was it was much harder for Kilkenny to work the ball out short from their puck outs and short passing out of the defence. Like, there was a few times Kilkenny went short with the puck out, maybe the fullback or whoever had a look downfield kind of had to take a solo and go back to the goalkeeper. So Tip were well set up, and then the goals kind of came from that, where Kilkenny thought, right, I've no one free to hit the ball down to, I'll run with the ball. Mm-hmm. And that's where Tip kind of overturned Kilkenny a few times and got in for goals. But I think overall, I suppose Tip's firepower was just superior, and not just the kind of well-mentioned full forward line of Darren McCarthy, Oisin O'Donoghue and Paddy McCormick, but Conor Martin scored 1-4 from play. He had a really, really good, busy game. Kyle English got 2 points, could have had a couple of more. But then the long-range scores of Sam O'Farrell and Adam Daly as well, like, they go a long way, especially with that breeze. They're kind of real just jabs throwing out at an opponent that were able to pick you off if you make any sort of mistake. So I just thought Tip were kind of, in general, the better team all round. And it's kind of exciting looking at some of those names to see where they can go in the next few years. It's a big jump to the senior. I know 3 of the lads have made that jump already, but you wouldn't be putting those sort of expectations on all the players. So, you know, it probably takes a bit of patience for some of these other players to make that jump, but they're certainly developing in the right direction.
Yeah, we might touch on that in a little while, but like, I suppose I think we have to give great credit to the management, Noel. Like Brendan Cummins and his back group, they have come under criticism for, I suppose, look, we have a support base that love the traditional style of hurling, but the day of just hitting the ball in long is gone. Like, because the other team they're so comfortable on the ball, they won't give it back to you. They'll work it up the field and they'll get scores. So you have to adapt. And look, I suppose you look at from the first match against Limerick this year, that Sam O'Farrell at 6 that quickly discovered, okay, Sam is not a centre back. He's better out in the wing. Get Jim Ryan in there at 6, much more comfortable. I definitely wasn't as deep as what Ben Curvin played last year, but you could see he was an out and out defender. Ben Curvin was converted forward, like so. And then Sam is out in the wing where he's more comfortable. They worked the ball up the field. Like they were just very, very well set up this year. And look, we always hear about Brendan, like it's about getting lads ready for senior level. And we look at senior level. It's that deep lying centre back. It's one of your midfielders. I think it was Joe Egan this time, played more of the defensive role this year. He covered, and then they were able to make sure. There was a couple of times Jeff Neary, a few aimless balls went in and Jeff Neary read them, but there were very, very few and far between.
Yeah, and like Shane, I think that what you're saying, it kind of speaks to the notion that we're getting more comfortable with the style of play. You know, that like there was quite a few of those out there last year, and they would have been through that experience. And again for next year, I think, did I hear, is it 12? I think young enough again next year after the panel.
I counted. I think 14 and 4 starters.
Yeah,
something like
that.
A nice base to start from.
Absolutely, and it's I suppose when you consider that those guys have come through minor as well and have had the experience of minor too to fall back on. Now, I suppose the word of caution too is that when we won the All Ireland minor 3 years ago, we turned around the year after and got nowhere. So you know that's always in the back of our minds too. But I just think, you know, when you talk about systems and styles and that, and you mentioned Jim Ryan. Like Jim Ryan is offering so many options there at centre back, he's wearing 6, but he's playing in that sweeper role. He's so used to playing that, having come right up through from the ranks, playing it with the Celtic Challenge team and the Tipp minors and onto the 20s, and playing with his club all the time as well. He's a really, really good player, to a really, really good guy to have playing that role. In fact, he's a lot like in the mode of Declan Hannon in the way he does it. You know, his distribution is excellent, and I suppose it's no coincidence that when Jim is distributing ball to forwards, it generally tends to be a really good ball, and the forwards are able to benefit from it. And I mean, you look at the first half last week. Kilkenny scored 3 points with the wind behind them from play. They scored 8 points in total. I think we scored 2-9 with the wind behind us in the second half. And that's where the game is won and lost, really. It's how you manage what you're doing when you have the wind and when you're in the advantage, but also how you manage when you're not. When the pressure might be on. And I thought Tipperary handled that pressure really, really well. Kilkenny had the breeze. They messed up as far as I'd be concerned with the way they went about their business, but we still had to handle it, and we did. It took us a little bit of time, but once we did handle it, we were very, very comfortable, Shane. And I think that's the point I suppose I'm making, maybe going a long way around saying it, that we are becoming more and more comfortable with that style. We're comfortable with it at senior level, and it's coming through the underage as well. So I think that can only bode well. You know, Brendan Cummins speaks about providing the players for the senior team. Well, he would be handing over a bunch this year who are shovel ready, to borrow that phrase. They'll just slot straight into that system. And I do think, as you said, the management team deserve enormous credit, because we're all critical of them. You know, we watched the match against Limerick in the first round and thought, my God, where are we going here? You know, and Brendan did say after that game, to give him his due, he did say after that game, now we know what we'll have after the match when we go away to Cork the following week. Now we know what these guys are made of, and we saw that, and we possibly said Cork were very poor. Now we're saying Kilkenny were very poor. We said Clare were poor in the round robin. They can't all be poor. I think it was just that we were good, and we've come good, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's something Paul Sam O'Farrell touched on, and I think we probably referenced it at the time, that like the first time that team played together was the Limerick game. Like, you had the 5 seniors always trained with the seniors, so didn't play any challenge matches. You had a good crew with Thurles CBS who were playing up to about a week or 10 days before the Limerick game. So, and you could see the patterns weren't there. But by God, when they got the second game going and they got moving, they were very, very slick. And like, you knew the setup, you knew who the team were, and I think you had your 2 big wing forwards, and I think they deserve a lot of the credit, like Cathal English and David Costigan. Like, people were saying, like, why Robbie Ryan or Jamie Orman should be on the team, but no, Cummins decided, no, I need 2 big men there that are either going to win their own ball and be athletic and carry the ball up the field. We have enough between Dara and Paddy and Oisin and Conor Martin. They'll do the majority of the scoring, but we don't need 6 scoring forwards. We need, if 4 of them do the majority of the scoring and a couple more lads chip in, we're in business.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of had a role in the team, and it looked like that. I still remember that first game against Limerick, how it looked like people didn't really know their roles. And you mentioned there the kind of fragmented nature of the build up to that game, and lads been out and with the seniors and the Harty Cup. Like I remember how frustrated Sam O'Farrell looked in that game. At different times, and there was a lot of nothing was happening fluidly in that game against Limerick. And I suppose it's easy to kind of say, oh, that could have been the best thing that ever happened, but it actually probably is, because a lot of expectation was coming in on this team coming into this championship. They were the minor champions from 3 years ago. They won the under-20 last year. And, young lads are like us all. They're human. They're going to hear these things. They're going to have it in the back of the head that we've a right chance here of getting to an All-Ireland final. And suddenly you show up half-cooked against Limerick and you get turned over at home. And if Tip only lost that game by a couple of points, and there was some goals that wouldn't usually go in that went in for Limerick that day. And if Tip hadn't conceded them and did get over the line, we mightn't be here talking today about Tip winning the All-Ireland, because they could have got caught later down the year if they took their eye off it. But by all accounts, they talked in the dressing room after that game that whatever happens from here on will never be outworked again in this championship. And like last week, talking to Aaron O'Halloran before the match during the week, and he was saying that, the big thing for us is turnovers. And we heard nearly every player you spoke to after the match on Saturday, they mentioned turnovers and winning turnovers. And that clearly became the identity of this team. And when you have a team with the talent on show there, that have that mentality, that you're onto a good thing. And speaking about the two wing forwards, like David Costigan, I'd see him as just he's just a workhorse. He gets through loads of bits there in the middle of the field, and he has talent too. I've seen him in the Croke Cup final up in Croke Park, tapping the ball off the ground into his hand and putting it over the bar late in that game. So he has the hurling ability as well. And Kyle English likewise. They're big men that can be targets for puckouts. And Kyle English got a couple of great scores. Now, he did hit one that would have been perfect for a highlight reel, where Paddy McCormick done a lovely back hand pass that Kyle English just misstruck, but that was probably the only thing he done wrong. And another player in that mould that probably could have played one of those wing forward positions, but was needed further back, was Joe Egan. And I thought just the work he got through the other day, even watching it back the other day, like I'd say there was definitely twice where they showed slow motion replays of him getting blocks on lads, and he was hooking and blocking. And I think he cramped up at the end of the match and was taken off for Mason Cawley, but he'd really given it his all. And he's a player now that I'd see that kind of has the physical attributes that in another few years of development could definitely make a mark at the next level too.
Yeah, and I suppose just touching maybe on, I suppose some of those guys were for the future and all. I think Adam Ryan for me has been, to see him converted from a wing forward, and a very good wing forward last year, minor level, to wing back. I think he's just been incredible and so composed on the ball, very slick. And I would definitely think he's another 2 years under 20. And we're thinking, there's a lot of these guys. How many more do you pull into the seniors at this stage? I suppose the last thing probably Brendan Cummins wants is too many going in, and then he doesn't have a full crew. But he's one, and I'd be thinking there probably has to be special, I'd say, consideration. I mentioned in my In All Fairness column this weekend the likes of Kyle English, and just he's from the Father Sheehy's club. They're a junior club, and that if he's allowed back just to play club hurling, he could be let drift. That somebody like him is brought in straight away, because there's a lot of people say you have to be playing at a certain level of club hurling to be. I think that's a nonsense, because I think Dr. Morris Park is if you can survive training at Dr. Morris Park, you're good enough. And you can only imagine how he'd inspire the next generation of Father Sheehy's if he stayed down there. And I don't like this thing of having you feeling you have to transfer to a bigger club to stay in the eye line. And I just think we've seen enough from Cathal English over the last 3 or 4 years that he has all the tools to be a senior intercounty wing forward. And if he's in Dr. Morris Park all the time over the next few years, he'll make it. If he's not brought in now, he could be let drift. It could drift.
Yeah, and he's not the only one, Shane. You know that I suppose down through the years we would have seen situations where players have been very good and then they're not kind of heard of simply because they haven't been brought into the right company. I think in any successful squad, and I'm thinking in particular of two players in the successful squads that Babs Keating had back in the 90s, late 80s and early 90s. Players who were in the squad and made really, really big contributions to Tipperary winning those All-Irelands, but who were not necessarily stars of their club team. But when they get into the right company and the right type of players around them, they can become major players and major parts of the overall picture. And you mentioned, a club like Father Shee's, Dara English too was on it from Father Shee's. So great to have two All-Ireland medals going back to the club.
You go back to Conor being the captain in 2018, like they're really, in terms of producing players, they're probably punching above their weight in terms of maybe, I would say, for the size of the club, they're producing players, and the last thing we want to see Father Sheehy's rise through the ranks maybe, and not just maybe producing players that end up going moving to other clubs. I always remember if would Mullinahone have become what they became if John Leahy felt I have to move to an intermediate or a senior club to stay in Babs Keating's thoughts back in the day.
Yeah,
and the same junior, people who this now Mullinahone or senior. Mullinahone were a mid-ranking junior club when John Leahy came through, and within 25 years they were senior champions.
Yeah, and the same as the same with Nicky English and Latin Cullen, playing in junior hurling in West Tipperary and intermediate in West Tipperary. That didn't impede Nicky's progress to become one of the greats, and there were many others, many other examples as well of guys who are playing at that level. And I think you're right, Shane. I think it's when you get into the likes of Dr. Morris Park or Semper Stadium as it was back in the day when Tipp were training there. That's when you're being measured against the best. And you can have a club player who'll go out and lord it in all his club matches, whether he's playing with a junior club or intermediate club or a senior club, can absolutely lord it, but might just not have the wherewithal to do it at intercounty level. And there are many players who have been really, really outstanding club players, but just could not make that step up, And then there are the others who are, average enough with their club, but when brought into the setup can be really, really good. And that's, I think, we have a bunch of players in this under-20 squad who have proven themselves. They've proven themselves to be really good. And you'd love to see what we can do in terms of having almost like a second development team there behind our 26 that will be named for your senior panel. Now, we have a panel of 40 at the minute. Wouldn't you love to see another 10 or 12 there? I know the Treasurer of the County Board won't want me to hear me saying this, but wouldn't you love to see another 10 or 12 or 15 players there who are working away in the background and seeing how they can develop and what they can become? There's no doubt about it that the strength and conditioning work that players require now to compete at intercounty senior level, it takes them 2-3 years to get that under their belt. At under 20 level, they probably have had a year or two of it already. So you're talking about another year or two of S&C and really good S&C, high quality stuff before we'll be able to assess whether these guys will actually make it or not. But I think it's worth the investment. I mean, look, let's be honest about it. It's what Limerick are doing. The resources are there for them to do it. Tipp County Board are doing all in their power to try and match that and to have those resources as well. It's not easy, but it does pay off.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't think it'd be too much of a risk, Paul. Just say if, I suppose, the minimum tip of another 10 days, hypothetically, 2.5 weeks, assuming we get a preliminary quarterfinal win that, which we should. If you were to say to an Adam Ryan or a Cahill English or somebody, okay, we're bringing you in now just to give you a feel of it for next year. Please God, maybe get to a semi-final or final where that's going on a bit longer like that. Okay, it might cost a small bit extra in the short term, but I know there's a lot of clubs around the country when they have a I suppose a good under 17, but he's not eligible for adults, but he might do a few training sessions with the senior team the year before, just to get a feel for being within the group. And I'd be thinking maybe we could have that. I know there's people to be clamoring saying that. And Paddy McCormick, in fairness to him, he was in there last year, had his injury problems, and I suppose decided to focus on under 20. And I suppose everybody was sort of thrilled for him last weekend, the fact that he wasn't able to play in the final last year. I know me and a few others were thinking, God, would he have made the difference if he'd been available against Offaly last year? Because like we'd lacked a bit of size and stature in that All-Ireland final.
Yeah, I'd say it's something that really should be done. I think in the next few weeks, it would be kind of a brilliant thing to get some of them players in with the seniors to kind of bridge that gap, get them in there, get them the experience. It's probably an easy time to go in the fact that they know Dara and Sam and Oisin are in there, and they can go in there knowing some faces anyway. But it's something that the Tip footballers have done since the end of the under-20 campaigns. You've seen the likes of Dai Hogan and Owen O'Connell actually playing for the senior team after the end of the under-20 campaign. But the rest of the under-20s that were impressive with Niall Fitzgerald this year have been in with the senior squad as an extended panel. You'd see him there at the matches, and that just creates a nice kind of dynamic there that you can see the next wave coming. And it probably gives the management team a chance as well, just to see, right, what's this lad made of? Let's see what he can kind of bring in these next few weeks. And it makes a whole lot of sense. And especially, as you said, for lads maybe that aren't going back to senior clubs, that they can make an impression before the county championship, because maybe Liam Cahill mightn't see Cahill English or whoever play in the next couple of months, but if he sees him inside in Dr. Morris Park the next few weeks, he's going to be getting him in his eye line. So I think it's something that kind of should be done, and as Noah said, you definitely get the benefit from it.
Yeah, like I just want to reiterate, like I'm not diminishing any junior A club. I think you made the point there, Paul, that when we get to the county championship, there kind of will be a lot of people won't see them in action.
Yeah, like, just visibility, really.
It's just about, like, you have the top three grades, like they'll probably get a lot of the focus. And like I mentioned, Adam Ryan, you look at Arravale Rovers, I think for the amount of underage players that they've had on Tip teams the last few years, I think they'll be towards the top end of the intermediate championship the next couple of years. So like that's a good standard. Like, so like it's not just Cahill English. As you look at Chris O'Donnell and Ballyluby and Jack Quinlan and the Feather, like they're all, if they're they've made it to this far, like, and like I'm sure it's up to Liam Cahill now going forward to see have they some of the attributes that are needed for senior, and if they do, you get them into S&C program and into Morris Park and very quickly, because like you said before, if you lose too much ground, it's very very hard to close it back up. But just quickly, this was turning to the seniors. I suppose we're probably about 10 days out from seeing the Tip seniors again in the championship. It'll be away to either Kildare or Laois in the preliminary quarter final. The McDonagh Cup final is on Sunday in Croke Park at 1:45. Kildare against Laois. I suppose, yeah, it'll be more eyes than usual, maybe on a McDonagh Cup note from a Tipperary point of view. I suppose Laois have been there before and won at Kildare, are kind of the up and coming team that beaten Laois in the round robin. Hard to do the back to back. I know. I think a lot of Tip fans would actually love the trip to Newbridge. I know Port Laois should be closer, maybe just a novelty factor. But I would have thought after maybe what happened 2 years ago, and it's probably maybe something we might touch on maybe next week, looking ahead to when we definitely know a fixture and who we're playing. I'd say you're probably preparing to take two games together rather than one and then one, because like we saw 2 years ago when we demolished Offaly, we were very, very flat against Galway the week after. It's about, I suppose, I'd say taking the two games together, really.
Yeah, it is, Shane, and we have the experience of 2 years ago to learn from as well. You know, I think the lads will have learned from that. Like in that evening up in Tullamore, we had thunder and lightning and the whole lot. Like, and we were very short of thunder and lightning when they came to the match against Galway 7 days later, or so it's actually 6 days later, I think it was. But anyway, a week later, anyway, and you know, yeah. As you said, there'll be a lot of focus on Croke Park on Sunday, which a lot of Tip people probably might have been focusing on before. But we've had a fair few encounters with Laois in recent times. Indeed, we've had a fair few Tip men over Laois teams in recent times as well. So we know a little bit about them, maybe our near neighbours and as well. And Declan Laffin in particular will know a lot about them, having been managing up there the club scene as well. So I don't think there'll be any great fears on that score. We'll probably know less about Kildare, even though there are again a lot of Tipp people involved in teams in Kildare. Johnny Enright being one of them, a former Tipp selector as well and player. He's involved in a lot of club teams up there as well. I happened to come across a Naas team about 2 years ago, an underage team in a series of blitzes that we were involved in, and they absolutely blew every Tipperary team out of the water. I couldn't believe it, how good they were at underage and the amount of work that's been done there. And I suppose, Naas is a very big town, so they have a big population there, and they were tapping into the whole hurling scene. Definitely think it's something that Will and Mar will probably be looking at as well, developing hurling in places like Kildare and continuing the development of it, because with population centres as big as that, in the likes of Naas and that, there's surely potential there, Kildare, can they do it a second time? Can they beat Laois a second time? Maybe. I would still have a fancy for Laois in that final, I think.
Yeah, same here. I just the bit of fixture tradition and playing at a higher level for longer, and I suppose trying to beat that second team twice after being probably upset the first time is difficult. I suppose I'd be fascinated, Paul, just to see. Like we know there was an announcement made 2 weeks ago that there's going to be 20,000 free tickets given out. Like how much white will be in the stands? Like the Kildare senior footballers are not playing this weekend. How many Kildare supporters are going to get to Croke Park and get behind their team? I suppose take advantage of the fact that they're on with Kilkenny and Galway. You have the TJ Reeds and the Owen Cody, so you're getting bang for your buck. I think it's €40 in. You're definitely getting more value than the €50 for a Munster final where it's a match and a musician. I think a lot of people would prefer that maybe the musician take the tenure off and get rid of the musician. But it's from that kind of view, I'd be just fascinated to see how much buy-in there will be from the Kildare supporters this weekend.
Yeah, and I'd agree with what Noah was saying there about Willie Maher and developing hurling. That while you often hear about it's going well in different places around the country, if you start with the big population centres, you could probably get some quick returns in terms of just numbers, getting more numbers playing. So yeah, big kind of couple of weeks for Kildare, regardless of course, this Saturday or this Sunday, but whatever happens, they'll have another kind of a big hurling team coming to Newbridge. So it'll be interesting to see. It was a really good idea, I think, to get the 20,000 free tickets, but we've been having that conversation in here about the kind of ticket prices, and the €50 for the Munster final, I think is a bit ridiculous. Considering it's €40 for the Leinster final and you get two games, so it doesn't really make much sense. And I don't kind of like the narrative of it's going to be a sellout, charge what you like kind of thing, because when does that stop? And we've seen the ticket prices in Munster kind of go up in consecutive years. So you kind of feel that 50 in your head is nearly a barrier, that you couldn't go to 55 really, but who knows? But it'll be interesting to see how much of a crowd in total is at the Leinster final, because ourselves here in Tipperary got plenty of criticism for not kind of supporting Tipp in recent years in big numbers, but Kilkenny, their support has been quite poor. We saw that on Saturday, and I think their game against Galway earlier in the year only had less than 10,000, I think. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how much travel to that game in Croke Park on Sunday.
Yeah, I suppose, no, just to touch on that Leinster final, I suppose Tipperary, as I say, would be doubly interested because Tipp, I suppose, barring a massive upset, will play the loser of the Leinster final in an All-Ireland quarter-final. And Kilkenny have been dominant in Leinster. They, as Paul said, they hammered Galway in the first round, but that's nearly 2 months ago now, and Galway have sort of responded well since, and were good winners over Dublin and Parnell Park, probably more convincing winners over Dublin than Kilkenny were over Dublin. So, and even though Galway will have maybe a couple of suspensions, I think this one will be an awful lot closer. I still fancy Kilkenny to edge it, but I definitely think the fact that Galway probably maybe I wouldn't say embarrassed themselves, but they didn't do themselves justice in the first game. They'll have a point to prove.
The will, Shane, and I think I'm with you. I'm really kind of undecided about this Kilkenny team, and where they sit in the whole scheme of things. And I think we'll know a hell of a lot more after Sunday. Like we've seen good and bad from them. Obviously we beat them down in Kilkenny in the league, which was a nice thing for us as well. Wexford beat them in their last round, so like they're going into the Leinster final on the back of a defeat, albeit they had a very different team out. They played a lot of their fringe players and all of that because it was essentially a dead rubber. Galway as underdogs are dangerous. And if Galway click, they can beat anybody, including Tipp, including Limerick, including Cork, and including Kilkenny. So I think that's what they're going to be looking for, to bring that performance to that game. And can they do it? Well, time will tell. But I think if they do, the Leinster title is there for them, because I'm not convinced about this Kilkenny team. The one thing I'd say, I suppose, in relation to the 20,000 free tickets, it shows the difference between the provinces. We know we couldn't afford to give away 20 tickets for the Munster final, and Leinster can give away 20,000. I know the Croke Park factor is there, and it's a good marketing ploy. 20,000 tickets to kids, free tickets to kids. The kids have to be brought though. And the adults have to buy the tickets to bring them along. So, it's a real hook. Throughout the hook there, the kids will get in free, but the adults still have to come.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how it looks on Sunday. And I suppose that's the Saturday, the Munster Senior Final, Limerick against Cork. I suppose no more than what Galway have to overturn, Kilkenny, Cork have to overturn it in a space of 3 weeks against Limerick, Paul. I think Limerick reasserted themselves that day, but I think Cork came in stone cold mentally and physically. I think the 3 week break after the Tipp game didn't do them any good. And I thought maybe the fact that there was a kind of a challenge match against Tipp really after the red card. I don't think they're going to come in soft this time. I'm not saying they're going to win. I think it'll be an awful lot closer, but I just don't think they'll be steamrolled like they were 3 weeks ago.
It would be a huge surprise if they were, I think, and it's funny the kind of reactionary nature of the championship in terms of going into that game a few weeks ago. It was tit for tat. I think Cork could have been favourites. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, they're marginal favourites.
Yeah, they lose by what was it, 15 points, and now it's kind of like, Limerick are going to waltz this Munster final kind of and beat Cork, but. Cork do have their injuries, which are a concern, but you'd have to expect there's going to be a big kick in Cork. But the only fear, I suppose, is that Limerick they seem to be not going away anywhere. All their main players are in really good form. Cian Lynch is just in sensational form at the minute. They've Kyle Hayes at centre back, who's kind of filling a void that was kind of a worry for Limerick in terms of who was going to replace Declan Hannon. But Kyle Hayes at centre back seems to be an inspired kind of decision. But I would expect a much better performance from Cork. I'd maybe worry a little bit about their defence if Rob Downey is missing and a few more injuries in that full back line. But one thing Cork do have is firepower. And they have lads that can, likes of Brian Hayes or Alan Connolly, they can go make a half chance into a goal, that kind of thing. They can just get a ball, take a man on and score a goal from nothing. So Cork have that firepower. And I'd imagine they'll have an awful lot of fire in their bellies to try and put in a better performance. But at the end of the day, it's not just about putting in a performance. Like, this is a Munster final. Cork, a lot of these players wouldn't have Munster medals from Cork. So I'm really looking forward to this. There's a bit of a novel kind of feeling about a Saturday 6 o'clock Munster final. So I'll be looking forward anyway to having the feed up, watching it somewhere on Saturday evening. But I do expect Limerick to win. But I still think, similar to you, feeling that Cork are going to be much more prepared for this one and in better fettle maybe than they were going into the round robin game. And at the end of the day, a round robin game is a round robin game. It's not knockout, it's not a final. There's a cup on the line here. Limerick are going for 7 in a row. Cork are looking to stop that. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I do think I'd be giving Limerick the nod.
Like, if you're Noel, I think if you're Cork, you're thinking, okay, and there's a lot of people saying that this is the middle game of a trilogy, but if Cork are decisively beaten again, like if they do end up meeting in an All-Ireland final, mentally or what are Galway scared, or what Cork going to be scared, and if they are, it makes them vulnerable in maybe in a semi-final, quarter final or semi-final as well. So like, I think Cork have to perform. If they come up just short, I think they'll take something from that. Like they'll be going out to win, no doubt. But like I think they have to perform. They have to take this game into the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, they have, and I suppose it's going to be a really telling game in the sense that we'll know an awful lot more about both sides. You know, I think, as you say, Shane, there's an element of doubt around Cork at the minute, and an element of doubt about their core. Is there a soft underbelly there? You're at nothing going into Limerick in a Munster final if you have a soft underbelly. So Cork will have to show that there's more to them, that there's more grit in them on Saturday night. And we're going to see that one way or the other. We're going to see whether they have it or whether they don't. It's as simple as that. If they don't have it, and if they take another beating, I think their year is in real danger. I think they won't go any further. The flip side of that, Limerick were beaten in their last game. I would say Limerick weren't at their best against Tipp. They probably weren't allowed to be at their best. They got a big result against Cork. So was that a freakish result or not? I'm not so sure that Limerick are quite as good as they looked that day. But I think
plus it's very. I thought the first half they were outstanding. They were reminding me a lot of the second half against Tipp in 2021 Munster final. But it's hard to hit that peak
in the Cork match. You mean, Shane, is it?
Yeah,
it's hard. Yeah,
it's hard to hit that consistency every time. You have to assume there's going to be a drop off from the Limerick Cork game in the round robin, and if there's a drop off from Limerick and Cork lift to the level, that brings it into a competitive avenue.
Yeah.
Like so.
It's something
exactly.
did kind of seem off as well about Cork. That I remember what the Sunday game highlights that night, and they were showing Nicky Quaid's puck outs, and Nicky Quaid didn't even have to work hard to get puck outs off. There was just huge gaps, about 30 yards wide of space that Limerick lads were running into. I wonder, was there an element of Cork maybe not showing their full hand either as well, in terms of setting up for puck outs, or because something was definitely off, because particularly the puck outs, like Nicky Quaid it was like a training match, hitting it out into space 90 yards down the field, and you have a lad running into it. So it'll be interesting to see. And it's not an awful long time ago that Cork beat Limerick twice, just last year. So they definitely have it in them. And it doesn't take Cork long to kind of get belief back in themselves. If they can get a good start against Limerick, then it kind of flips the other way, that Limerick could think this Cork team have beaten us before. They have that memories too. So I think it's kind of set up to be a brilliant match on Saturday. Loads of narratives and storylines, and I think it's in John Kiley 17-0 or something in finals as Limerick manager, which is outrageous. So that'll be interesting to see, does that streak continue as well.
Yeah, I know. I think the evening factor won't take, and I think it could be it's a long day to get ready for supporters, and I'm sure they'll be well oiled by 6 o'clock, some of them, and I think the evening games, I don't think it'll make any difference. I know it's not a bit novel for a Munster final, but I guess was the fact that they're alternating the finals every second year from Saturday to Sunday. I think that's only fair, really. I suppose they want to have the McDonagh match as the curtain raiser to Leinster, so I think you have to give them their due. I suppose just turning to senior football, Paul, you were in Mullingar, you were double jobbing at the weekend. Season is over, disappointment. I suppose that Leitrim game was the one that they were always going to be judged on, being in a group with Kildare and Sligo. And then listening to 2-2 to 3 points at half time against the Breeze, it was nearly as good as game over, and just, I suppose, a disappointing way to go out. Sort of, in fairness to Leitrim, they set up brilliantly, like more or less said, we're holding on to the ball in the first half, and look, they got 2 goals as a bonus. Tipp just didn't have enough ball to even kick. I don't think they even kicked that many wides in the first half. They just couldn't get their hands on the ball, and they tried into that Breeze, like there was trying to make up 5 points was nearly impossible.
Yeah, that was it. Like the way the game kind of played out, Leitrim were against, and the wind was strong on Saturday in Nolan Park. It was even stronger on Sunday up in Mullingar. And like that, yeah, Leitrim were just kind of happy to hold on to the ball against the wind in the first half and just limit the amount of possession Tip had. And like it kind of had me thinking of last year and seasons gone past, watching football games where it was over and back on the 45, and you're thinking, when is this going to end, or when is the whistle going to go? There was an awful lot of that in the first half. And I suppose in Leitrim's defence, the onus was on Tipperary, I think, with the win, to push up on Leitrim and try and win the ball back and force Leitrim into mistakes. And that just didn't happen. Tip were really flat. They were really standoffish against Leitrim. They didn't try to force many turnovers at all. So it was a real dour first half, 2-2 to 3 points. And one of Tipperary's scores was a 2-pointer, from Keane Smith. So Tip only scored twice in the first half with, maybe not a gale force wind, but a fairly close to it in that first half at their back. So it kind of going down the tunnel at halftime, it was a long way back. Now, in fairness, Tip did improve in the second half and kicked some nice scores, like Keane Smith. In fairness to him, I have my notes here in front of me from the match. He scored, he scored 2 2-pointers and 3 points. So he was a bright spark. Tip might have had a half goal chance in the first half with Emmett Maloney breaking through. He fisted it, or he just kicked it over the bar for a finish. There was a kind of a half goal chance on. Stephen O'Brien had a good game, but yeah, Tip just needed to get an awful lot more from that first half, and it made the second half kind of a huge order for Tip to come back. The Tip did kick a few wides in the first few minutes of the game with 2-point attempts, dropped 1 or 2 short as well, but it wasn't a case of Tip missed the load in the first half, and that's why they only scored 3 points. As you said, they just couldn't get the ball, and it was a kind of real disappointing end to what's been, it's been a difficult year, but it's been a year where you can see green shoots coming. A lot of Tipperary's good performers throughout the year were under 20s last year. Keane Smith, who I mentioned, he's probably been Tip's player of the year, and he was under 20 last year. Micheál Freeney scored, I think, 5 or 6 goals throughout the year. He was under 20 last year. Jack O'Neill got on a heap of ball the other day. He was under 20 last year, and Shane Ryan in goals has had a fine year in his debut. And then you have Owen O'Connell, Dai Hogan, they're under 20s this year that have made their debut, and a few lads on the bench as well. So it's been, as I said, a year with green shoots, but a really kind of disappointing end. There's nothing you could kind of come away from Mullingar on Sunday saying that was a positive from that game from a Tipperary point of view. It was just one of those games, kind of completely fell flat. Leitrim got the goals, and a real disappointing end to the year.
Yeah, I suppose, Noel, it was, I suppose, in the face, if you look at it, Tip got to the preliminary quarter final of the Tailteann last year, didn't this year, so you could look at it as a step back, but it's a new management team. They had a better league than last year. They beat Waterford this year in the championship. I thought they competed pretty well against Clare in the Munster semi-final. Spells against Sligo and Kildare were very competitive. I suppose the Leitrim game was the one that they were always going to be judged on, the Tailteann, and they came up, I suppose, they came up well short. And look, I suppose Philly Ryan was saying afterwards, he's sort of pleading for the supporters for patience, and also for the players to stick together, not have a core lads maybe step away and they have to start rebuilding all over again. That when they gather together maybe next October, November again, that they have they're on a strong platform. They'll be able to assess maybe under the new rules, can they do some more maybe in terms of long range kicking, maybe even forcing goals. I do think that there's an awful lot of maybe goals being left behind by all teams at the moment, that there's kind of a dink pass in around the new semicircle that teams are not taking on, or they could maybe force 1-on-1s. But yeah, it's kind of, you kind of know that the pressure will be on a small bit more next year, Noel.
It will, Shane. You get a certain amount of leeway in the first year. And to be fair, I don't think Philly Ryan ever looked for leeway. I think he came into it knowing exactly what he had at his disposal and trying to see what he could do with them. I do think we're ahead of where we were last year in terms of development. I think we've a lot of work done. I think we've a lot of new guys brought into the panel. Paul outlined a number of the names there, fellas who have played quite well at different stages in the season. And I think they'll be better for this year's experience. I do, however, feel that the league next year is really important. We really do need to get out of Division 4 if we're good enough. We haven't been good enough to get out in the last couple of seasons, even though that would have been the goal. We just haven't been good enough. So I think, there's probably going to be an important phase from kind of the end of October, beginning of November, up to the start of the league, where we need to be working hard and getting on top of our game. And Philly has cut his teeth now at intercounty level and his backroom team as well, and I think they'll be better equipped for next year too. So I overall I'd say disappointment in Leitrim. As you say, it's a game that we'll be judged on, but overall I think we're ahead of where we were last year. So therefore you can say that we can see progress and green shoots, as Paul described them earlier on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's minimal progress, but then you sort of looked at, you'd be encouraged with how the under-20s performed. Very unlucky not to get to a Munster final, and there's probably a few more players, particularly the taller guys, the likes of the O'Keefes and the Charleses in the middle of the field, like the
Joe Higgins and
Joe Higgins, they're probably a few more on top of O'Connell and Charlie King and stuff that are probably more invaluable at senior level now, or especially that big man in the middle of the field is coming back with a vengeance. I suppose, Paul, just to wrap it up at the camogie, disappointment on the double for Tipp last weekend. They lost the under-20 both comprehensively to Cork, under-23 and senior, and I suppose we thought maybe we've been bridging the gap the last few years, but it looks like maybe Cork really seem to be pulling away from everybody else at the moment. Like, geez, I know they had a bit of a breeze in the first half and they made it count, but like that it was a bit, I'd say it was very, very demoralising for Tipp to be so well beaten at home.
Yeah, like, John, we kind of knew, well, you obviously know how good Cork are because they're the All-Ireland champions, but they won their first round game 6-25 to 5 points against Limerick. Now, I don't matter who you're playing or whatever, if you can score 6-25 and only concede 5 points, then that'll tell you how good Cork were. But really disappointing for Tipperary, as you said. They've been so close in the last couple of years, and they've beaten Cork in recent years, and gone close with them in championship and beaten them in league games and things like that. So it's big disappointment, I suppose. If you're playing against Cork, you need everything to kind of go your way, particularly early on. And if you concede 3 goals in the first 10 minutes, it's an awful long way back. And then, Tipp have been dealt a couple of injury blows this year. Claude Quirk, as that was mentioned recently, but it's worth reminding that Emer McGrath is a all-star level forward for Tipperary that isn't there this year. Caught Devan is retired.
Injured last weekend.
Yeah, and I think Cueva Maher went off injured as well. So, these are all of Tipp's starting 15 easily, and if you're missing some of those, it's always going to be difficult. So, the good news is, Tipp has still 3-4 rounds of the championship to play, and it starts on Saturday against Wexford. So, Tipp will need to win all these games, but it's they're good enough to do that. But it's just about what the mentality is now. After you said it's difficult shipping an 18-point beating at home to Cork, but if they can go on a run now in these next few games and get those wins, momentum will be built back. Hopefully you get some bodies back and you get into the knockout stages with a bit of momentum. But it was definitely a tough day for Tipp camogie, given the under-23s were well beaten on Saturday as well.
Yeah, and I suppose, it's about the response now against Wexford this Saturday. And, to be honest, it's not the hardest group Tipp are in. Look, they're in Cork, but Tipp would be expected to beat Wexford, beat Limerick and Clare, which means they finish second in their group, and probably looking at the other group, you're probably looking at maybe a Kilkenny in a quarter-final, because they lost to Waterford last weekend. You think Waterford and Galway will probably duke it out for top spot there. So, I think Tipp should, provided the win out for him, they should get to a quarter-final in some shape or form, but they probably need to do so with a bit of momentum, a bit of positivity. I think not just winning, but winning, playing well over the next few weeks to be important.
Yeah, I think I'd be backing him to bounce back, Shane. This team has shown character plenty over the last couple of seasons. They've had a few serious knocks, and they still managed to come back from them. And that, you mentioned the players that are missing, and obviously no team can afford to be losing players of that caliber. But I think the management team have worked hard to try and ensure that there's a strong panel there. They've put a lot of emphasis on the depth of their panel. So it's going to be tested, really, with those players that you mentioned who won't be there. I would back them to get over Wexford at the weekend and get themselves back on the horse again, as they say. Going forward, then you want to be going into those knockout stages with momentum behind you. And you, from where we are right now, if we do make the knockout stages, we will have that momentum behind us. And when you talk about the match last weekend against Cork, 3 goals went in 10 minutes. That can have a really demoralizing effect, and it almost wipes the game out straight away. That you're not going to come back from that, and you can see that the game is gone from you from a very early stage. I think if Tip played Cork in the morning, it would probably be a different result. Maybe not a different result, but it would probably be a different game. But that's the way it is. That's what they have to do. They have to show a bit of resilience now and a bit of courage to go after what they're looking for. And knowing the players involved and knowing the management team, I think they will.
Yeah, and just at the under-23s, they're away to Waterford this Saturday at 2:00. And I suppose just finally, the senior ladies footballers, they're in the All-Ireland Championship this Saturday. They're away to Galway in Tuam Stadium at 2:00. Noel, I suppose they're in a group with Donegal. I suppose that Donegal game at home, I suppose the way the fixtures are falling, the Donegal game was always going to be the key one. Win that, get to a quarter final. Tip haven't been in a quarter final. Again, that would be okay. I would say that Munster is very, very tough at the moment. Kerry, Cork, and Waterford are very strong, and they've had it tough. And even Cork and Galway have been in the ladies football Division 2 group, even though you'd see them as Division 1 teams. They've been competitive without getting the results, but they're playing really, really good teams. You think, okay, if they can come out of the Galway game in good fettle, and then they get in good shape to take on Donegal at home, I'd say that this Saturday will take care of itself, but the Donegal game is the key one in a couple of weeks' time.
It is, Shane. Yeah, and I mean the team has been solid without being spectacular. I suppose is the way to describe them. But I think as well, and I haven't seen an awful lot of them now, admittedly, but from what I'm reading and seeing on the few clips that we are seeing, I think they are improving with their games as well. So as you say, the next game is the one. We'll see how they perform in that against Galway, but the Donegal game is the one really that you'll be kind of earmarking as the one that you need to win. That's a home game as well, so they'll have a little bit of support there, and let's see how they go.
Absolutely, and the Tipperary under 16 or under 14 ladies football team in an All-Ireland final, silver final this weekend as well. So
the challenge final as well, Shane, isn't it? It's not this weekend.
Sorry.
The Celtic Challenge final, that's this
weekend. I forgot I mentioned the Tipperary gold against Cork White. That's in Semple Stadium on Saturday at 2:00. I suppose that the second tier competition of sort of minor hurling. So I'm sure there'll be, I suppose even Brendan Cummins will be in there looking to see maybe some guys that maybe didn't feature a lot at the minor level. Maybe that could be good enough for the under-20s next year. And I suppose that we have 5 league finals in the County Hurling League this weekend as that competition wraps up. And congrats to Bursley. They won the Division 1 title last week against Bursley. I think Bursley a bit of a dark horse this year. There's some players back and a few young guys coming into their ranks. I think they'll be very, very dangerous. So that's about it for this week's Tipcast. We've had a big show, and my thanks to Noel Dundon and to Paul Carroll. We'll be back next week looking ahead to Tipperary's preliminary quarter final against either Laois or Kildare. Bye for now.